أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي ليس لأوليته ابتداء ولا لأزليته انقضاء، وانحصرت الأوصاف عن كنه معرفته، ورضعت عظمته العقول، والذي لا تواري عنه سماء سماء ولا أرض أرضا. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيد البطحاء سيد المرسلين والأنبياء أبي القاسم محمد المصطفى.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى الجوهرة القدسية البتول العذراء سيدة النساء فاطمة الزهراء، وعلى بعلها أمير المؤمنين وبنيها الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
لا سيما على بقية الله وحجته الكبرى الذي بيمنه رزق الورى، وبوجوده ثبتت الأرض والسماء، ولولاه لصاخت الأرض بأهلها، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من حين عداوتهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: من أخلص لله 40 صباحا جرت ينابيع الحكمة من قلبه على لسانه. صلوات. Whoever exercises ikhlas for 40 mornings, fountains of wisdom burst from his soul and flow over his tongue. We have been discussing this hadith of the Prophet since a while, and the practical tips given by Ayatullah al-Uzma Sayyid Mahdi Tabatabai Bahrul Ulum regarding this hadith under the discussion of this hadith. And our conversation had reached this point where a person is doing this spiritual travel towards Allah. What's the ilm al-akhlaq calls it? A salik, person who is going through a sair wa suluk il Allah. That means the spiritual travel towards Allah. This is called suluk in Arabic, and the person who is traveling on the spiritual path is called salik in the terminology of ilm al-akhlaq. So when the salik, the traveler, is traveling, obviously our scholars say for every travel there are 8 things required. There has to be an origin of every trip, and which in Arabic we call it mabda, and there has to be a destination for every trip, which is called muntaha, and there has to be a masafat related to every trip, which is the distance that needs to be traveled. We need to keep in mind the distance. Isn't it right? Before we travel, we bring into consideration all those points. And fourth of all, there is a masir. There is a path which has to be fixed for your travel. You cannot just go on an undefinite, undecided, unknown, undiscovered, totally unknown, uncharted areas. Isn't it right? You have the plan to go on the well-defined routes. So the route and the path that we tread is called masir. Al-masir ila Allah. Fifth of all, azad. Necessary things required for your survival during the trip. Just like when you travel, you take your breakfast, you take your snacks, you take your food with you, all that you may fall in need, all that you may need during the trip. So things required for your survival are falling in the category of zadus safar. That's the fifth point. Sixth of all, there has to be a rahila. There has to be a vehicle that you need to ride for your travel. Whatever vehicle suitable to your trip, your situation. That is called rahila. Seventh of all, there has to be a rafiq. There has to be a companion. Islam is suggesting us. We are not supposed to go out on trips, just like that. There has to be a rafiq, preferably. And eighth of all, the most important thing, which is the guide of the trip. You must have a guide, rahnuma, hadi, a guide who is guiding you all the way from the origin till the destination. These are the 8 logical things every person requires for every trip in order to be successful. Now, before we start into those 8 points one by one, just like for our bodily travels, we need those things. For our spiritual travels, the scholars of akhlaq have mentioned, the same 8 things from the spiritual perspective, and we will get to those points one by one. What is the origin of the travel? What is the destination of the spiritual travel? Exactly where we want to reach? What is the distance that we need to travel? And what is the path that need to be tread? What is the necessary things that we need to carry along with us for our survival in this trip? Which is Zadus Safar, and then the Rahila, the vehicle that a Salik, a traveler towards Allah, needs to ride that vehicle, the Rahila. And then obviously, who is the Rafiq? Who is your companion? Who are your enemies? And who are you're supposed to be your companions? And who is the guide? Before we get to that point, it is important. Our scholars say the first step towards your movement, step number 1, where everything starts, is the zikr and remembrance of Allah. Qadamul awwal. The first step in the sayr and suluk, in the spiritual travel towards Allah, is your remembrance. Zikr. Zikr means yad, remembrance of Allah. And obviously, our scholars say the zikr is the cause of inqita' ila Allah. That means breaking away from everything else towards Allah. Just like in the Munajat Sha'baniya, we say, Ilahi habli kamal al-inqita' ilayk. When Shaheed Mutahari was, he was one of the most efficient, or probably the most efficient ihtimalan student of Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh. When Shaheed Mutahari used to arrive in his lecture, Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh said, now the person has arrived for whom I can say, he can understand everything what I say. So not everybody, with due respect to all, but not everybody was on that level for whom Allama Tabatabai can say that he can understand everything that I am saying in the lecture. So not every student is on the same. Shaheed Mutahari is a very great personality. Obviously, he's a student of Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini, when he started his Dars Kharij in Madrasa Faidiyya, there were 2 students, and it was started in the room of Shaheed Mutahari. So he was one of the basic beginning students of Imam Khomeini for his Dars Kharij. So Imam had said, Mutahari ke dar taharat ruh wa, taskiye batin wa Islam shanasi kam nazir wood, something on those lines. So obviously he is a great person. He asked his teacher Allama Tabatabai, what is the dua that I should read in the qunut of my prayers? Obviously all the duas are great, but Allama Tabatabai replied to Shaheed Mutahari about this dua that we were talking about, which is part of the Munajat Sha'baniya. The Munajat Sha'baniya is one of the greatest assets, and it's part of the 2 du'as which Imam Khomeini used to consider as his most beloved du'as. When somebody asked him, which du'as do you like most? And obviously an Arif person should reply, it deserves to reply that question in the best way, because they have, the du'as are one of the greatest source of the ma'rifat of Ahlul Bayt. Du'as and ziyarat, one of the greatest source of the ma'rifat of Ahlul. So Urafa have everything to do with the ziyarat and du'a. So we find that Imam replied Dua Kumail and Munajat Sha'baniyya. This is what he likes best. And in Munajat Sha'baniyya, that's where we learn Allahi habli kamal al-inqita' ilayk. Oh our Lord, oh my Lord, give me the perfect breaking away towards you. That means I perfectly break away from everything else towards you. Wa anir absara qulubina, and enlighten, illuminate the vision of our souls. Illuminate the vision of our soul. That means make the vision of my soul, our souls, nurani. Wa anir absara qulubina bi dhiya'i nadariha ilayk. Make the vision of our souls nurani, the visions of our soul nurani, through the the flash, through the light of you looking at us. If Allah looks, if there's a nazar of lutf from Allah towards our soul, that is going to change our destiny. Isn't that right? So that's what we are asking from Allah. Through you looking at our souls, make our visions of the soul illuminous and nurani. وَحَتَّى تَخْرِقَ أَبْصَارُ الْقُلُوبِ حُجَبَ النُّورِ. So the visions of the soul can rip apart the curtains of light. See, we have hijabat of zulmat. Ilm al-Akhlaq teaches us there are curtains of darkness, and hijabat of nur, curtains of nur. When a person departs this material world and his soul has passed through the initial stages of tazkiyatun nafs, and then you reach the alam al-malakut, obviously you don't have zulmat there. There is no zulmat in alam al-malakut, but there are still curtains remaining. And those curtains which are not the material curtains, they are the curtains which we call them the hijabat of nur. They are curtains of nur. So you have to increase in your personal ruhani nuraniyat to a level which is more than the level of that curtain, so you can rip apart that curtain, because your nur is now more than that curtain of nur. So if you have more nur in your qalb than the hijab of nur, you will be allowed to pass through that hijab of nur. And then you have to increase your nuraniyat further to the further high level, so you can pass to the next hijab of nur. So they are hijabat of nur as well. So we say حتى تخرق أبصار القلوب حجب النور احتمالا فتصل إلى معدن العظمة. So they can reach the mineral of greatness. وتصير أرواحنا, and our souls become وتصير أرواحنا معلقة بعز قدسك, and our souls become hanging with the izzat and dignity of your holiness. So the souls become attached with the dignity of your holiness. So this is one of the greatest. So these are the ma'arif of Islam. So our scholars say, before we start the trip, it's important to remember that the step number 1 is zikr and remembrance of Allah, because the zikr is the means. Zikr is the cause of inqita'. How can when you are traveling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can you travel towards Allah unless you depart this world? So you have to depart the world of matter. In order to depart and break away from the world of matter, to fly up, you have to break away and leave the world of matter behind. Breaking away from the world of matter requires zikr and remembrance. That's where the role of zikr comes into play, and as step number 1. So we need to remember Allah and understand the concept of zikr before we head towards the travel. And it causes the flight towards the malakut. Our scholars say zikr is the is a flight towards the malakut. Zikr is the cause of nuraniyat in the qalb. The nur of Allah comes in your qalb when you have His remembrance. Zikr is the cause of taharat of the qalb. Cleanliness of the soul is because of the zikr. So the zakir is tahir, and the ghafil, which is opposite of zakir. Somebody who remembers Allah all the time is called zakir. A person who is in the remembrance all the time. He is a zakir. And the person opposite to that is a person who forgets Allah, which is called a ghafil. So the zakir is tahirul qalb, and the ghafil is obviously lacking the taharat of the qalb, and has actually ghaflat takes us towards the sins and zulmat and darkness and najasat of the qalb. Also, our scholars say the zikr and remembrance of Allah is the ruh of all the ibadat. That's the essence of every ibadat. No ibadat is considered to be a complete and perfect ibadat without the remembrance of God. And remembrance causes the ibadat to be accepted as well. Because through remembrance you will maintain your taqwa. And Allah has already said in the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. So we learn in the light of that verse that Allah only accepts from the muttaqi people. Any ibadat, every ibadat can be accepted from a person who has taqwa. Those who don't have taqwa, none of their ibadat can be acceptable in the eyes of Allah. And also the scholars say about zikr, that zikr is one of the ahdaf of tashri' al-ibadat. One of the goals why Allah has legislated the worships for humanity. The legislature of the Sharia, do's and do nots, do this and don't do that. All the entire Sharia is legislated. One of the goals why Allah is legislating the entire Sharia, to make us zakir, to make us constantly remembering Him, and making us detaching from ghairullah, because any attention towards ghairullah means ghaflat from Allah. And ghaflat from Allah happens when our soul is paying attention towards ghairullah. So obviously the ibadat can only take place when you do an action for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't it right? And like we say, then all our things need to be ibadat in Islam. Everything a mu'min performs should be ibadat. She should do it qurbatan Allah. Ibadat is composed of two components. One, do something which Allah commanded. So if you do something that Allah did not command, you cannot call it ibadat. This is what you started. Isn't it right? All the traditions and customs and taqaleed and adat and rusum and customs that people are doing in different countries in Islamic Ummah, they cannot claim a sawab and ajr from Allah. Allah can only give sawab to you. Allah will give the sawab to us only if we do things that He commanded. What we call it, that things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is matloob in the law, which has matloobiyat, which is we are ordered by Allah to do those things. Allah has demanded those things from us, not things that we ourselves start and add into the Sharia. Second of all, the second component of a thing becoming ibadat, first of all, Allah should have commanded us to do that. We should not have added it. Second of all, the thing should be done, the action should be done qurbatan ilallah, in order to seek nearness towards Allah. Imtithalan li amrihi. So we are obeying the command of Allah, qurbatan ilallah, so that we become muqarrab and close to Allah. These two things make up thing ibadat, and the goal of every ibadat is to become zakir, remembering Allah all the time. Ayat of Quran. Let's turn to the ayat of Quran. Surah Ahzab, verse 41. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu uzkurullaha dhikran kathira. O you who believe, remember Allah a lot. Again, no amount is fixed. Just Allah says, remember Allah a lot. Alladhina, in Surah Al Imran, verse 170, 1. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yeah, الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. Those who remember Allah, in other words, those who remember Allah in the standing, in the sitting positions, in the standing position, in the sitting position, and while they are on their sides, the pehlu, on their sides. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and they think about the creation of the heavens and earth. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا, O our Lord, you didn't create it batilan, Subhanaka faqina azab an-nar, glorified are you, so keep us away from the azab of the fire. In Surah Al-A'la verse 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again mentions the zikr where he says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى, certainly the person who became purified got successful. So anybody who is purified became successful, in other words. وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى, and he remembered the name of his Lord, فَصَلَّى, and he prayed. In Surah Al-Insan or Surah Al-Dahr, verse number 25, they are both names for the same surah. وَذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا, again Allah talks about his zikr. Remember the name of your Lord, بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا, that means in the evening and in the morning. In Surah Al Imran verse 41, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ كَثِيرًا وَسَبِّحْ بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْأَبْكَارِ. So remember the name of your Lord a lot, and glorify, sabbih, and do the tasbih in the night and the day. So also in Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا قَضَيْتُمُ الصَّلَاةَ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. So we learn in the light of this verse that when you perform the prayers, remember Allah in the situation of standing and sitting and sleeping, when you are basically on your sides. Also, when we turn to the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam about the zikr, there is a lot of information available on that subject. In Wasa'il al-Shia, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has said, Man akthara zikr Allah azza wa jal adallahu Allahu fi jannatihi. Whoever has a lot of zikr of Allah, Allah will bring him under the zil, under the shadow of his Jannah. So this is another very important thing to remember. See, on the Day of Judgment, nobody has a shadow. Day of Judgment is a flat, earth will be flat. Everybody is standing on one straight field, no mountains, no ditches, no valleys. No one can hide, no one can run away. It's a flat surface. You see, when it's a flat land, there's no room for hiding. Isn't it right? There's no room for running away. It's a flat land. So, and there will be, everybody is standing under a burning heat. There is no shadow on that day, except for people who arranged for the shadow for their umbrellas from this dunya. In order for you to get the shadow there, you have to do certain things which earns you the shadow. So one of those things that earns us the shadow is remembering Allah a lot. Those people who are remembering Allah a lot will be under the shadow on that day. So, yeah. also one of those people who will be, yeah, so, yeah, okay. So let's move to the next hadith. Imam Salih alayhi salam says that وَأَكْثِرُوا ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ فِي كُلِّ سَاعَةٍ مِّن سَاعَاتِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Do a lot of remembrance of Allah as much as you can in the hours of the night and the day. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَ بِكَثْرَةِ الذِّكْرِ, because Allah commanded a lot of zikr. وَاللَّهُ ذَاكِرٌ لِمَنْ ذَكَرَهُ, and Allah remembers the one who remembers him, مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, from the mu'mins. وَأَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ لم يذكره أحد من عباده المؤمنين إلا ذكر بخير or إلا ذكر بخير. So we learn in the light of this hadith that anyone who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the servants, from the mu'min servants of Allah, this person is remembered with khair. That's the way it goes. If you remember Allah, you are remembered with khair. In another hadith, as we are talking about this concept of zikr in the eyes of the hadith, Imam Salih says, قال الله لموسى أكثر ذكري بالليل والنهار وكن عند ذكري خاشعا. Do a lot of remembrance in the of mine in the night and the day, and be at the time of my remembrance khashi'an, fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the situation of fearing Allah, in other words. وَعِنْدَ بَلَائِ صَابِرًا, and obviously patient on my test and bala. وَطْمَئِنْ عِنْدَ ذِكْرِي, and be mutma'in and satisfied at the time of remembering me. وَعْبُدْنِي وَلَا تُشْرِكْ بِي شَيْئًا, worship me and don't associate partner with me. إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرِ, the return is towards me. Ya Musa ij'alni dhukhraka wa dha' indi kanzaka min al-baqiyat as-salihat. So, O Musa, ij'alni dhukhraka, make me your treasure, make me your in other words, your assets, your asset, and وَضَعْ عِنْدِي كَنْزَكَ, and put your treasure from all the good deeds, put them with me, in other words. Also, مَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا وَلَهُ حَدٌّ يُنْتَهَى إِلَيْهِ, everything has a limit where it ends. إِلَّا الذِّكْرِ فَلَيْسَ لَهُ حَدٌّ يُنْتَهَى إِلَيْهِ, except the remembrance of Allah, which has no had and zikr mentioned anywhere that you have to do this much and should not go beyond that. For the rest of the ibadat, we have the limits mentioned, what to do and how much to do, and not about the zikr of Allah. So we are discussing the step number 1 as we are moving forward. Like I said in the beginning of my speech, when the salik is traveling from the mabda towards the muntaha, from the origin towards the goal, before we start the trip, our scholars say that zikr is a prerequisite for the suluk ilallah, and that's where basically is one of the ahdaf of the tashri' of all the ibadat. All the ibadat are legislated for one of the ahdaf and goals for legislating all the ibadat is the zikr. Prophet has said in his wasiyat to Abu Dharr, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that alayka bitilawat al-Quran wa dhikrillahi kathiran. That means do the tilawat of Quran and remembering Allah a lot. فَإِنَّهُ ذِكْرٌ لَكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ وَنُورٌ لَكَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, because this is your remembrance in the heaven and nur for you in earth. So zikr provides nuraniyat here and remembrance there. Abu Zar used to be remembered quite a lot in the heavens as well, because remember the story when once Abu Zar rahmatullah alayhi was coming to talk to the Prophet, and he discovered there's somebody sitting. The narration says Dihyatul Kalbi was there, sitting in the next to the Prophet. So when he saw, he didn't want to disturb the Prophet, because somebody is talking privately to the Prophet. Obviously, akhlaqan, it's not good to disturb. Let him privately finish the talk, and let's not disturb. So he saw that Dihyatul Kalbi is sitting. He just went away. And the narration, the hadith says it was Jibreel in the form of Dihyatul Kalbi. In the human form he came, and he was sitting with the Prophet. So Jibreel said to Rasulullah, Hadith Qummi says, according to this riwayat, that if Abu Zar had came to us, we would have said salam to him. So, and then Jibreel said that there is a dua of Abu Zar, which is, in other words, ma'roof, which is known to the angels in the heaven. So basically, the angels of the heaven, we learn in the light of this narration, angels of the heaven are reading that dua that Abu Zar recites here in dunya. There's a dua that Abu Zar used to recite, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-imana bika wa tasdiqa bi nabiyyika wal afiyata min kulli bala. Oh my Lord, I seek iman in you, and tasdiq, certifying your prophet, wa tasdiqa bi nabiyyika wal afiyata min kulli bala. And afiyat means the ni'mat of Allah, which empowers you to always choose Allah's obedience over Allah's disobedience. That ni'mat of Allah in your qalb that empowers you at every intersection of your life to choose Allah's obedience over disobedience is called, this ni'mat is called afiyat, which is the greatest of all the ni'mats. So wal afiyata min kulli bala, and I want afiyat from every test. That means every test when I face in my life, I always choose your obedience over your disobedience. Wa shukra ala al-afiyah, and I seek thanking you over the afiyat. Wal ghina, and at the end he said, wal ghina an shirarin nas, and beniyazi. It means, so I don't stand in need of the evil people. So this is the great dua that I see that the angels of Allah like up there in the heaven. So any person who has the ikhlas and nuraniyat and has the strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become the focus of attention of the angels, because a human here can achieve the nuraniyat more than the nuraniyat of the angels, more than what the angels can ever achieve in their life. So that's why the angels come down to the earth after seeking permission from Allah to say, some of the angels who are allowed, they come down from the heavens to the earth to pray behind some of the humans, because they find more nuraniyat in praying behind those of the humans than the nuraniyat they can ever achieve if they remain in the heaven and pray themselves. So they are humans who have that much high nuraniyat. So angels basically are their subservient and khadim. Didn't the hadith say, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, Inna al-malaika la khuddamuna wa khuddamu shi'atina min al-mu'mineen. The angels are our servants and servants of our mu'min shi'as. So if we are the Shia of Amir Mu'min alayhi salam in the real sense of the word, and if we are the, we are mu'mins and Shias, then obviously angels will be our servants. Ayatollah al-Uzma, Mirza Jawad Maliki Tabrizi, one of our great Urafa, he said that I know somebody that the angel of Allah comes and wakes him up at the time of Salatul Layl. Angel comes and wakes him up and says to him, addresses him as my master. So every time the time of Salatul Layl comes, the angel comes and wakes him up for the Salatul Layl, calling him my master. So, also it is narrated from Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam that قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله بادروا إلى رياض الجنة. That means take sabqat, take a lead towards the gardens of paradise. فقالوا يا رسول الله فقالوا ما رياض الجنة. People asked the Prophet, what are the gardens of paradise? Prophet replied, حلق الذكر. That means the gatherings where the remembrance of Allah is taking place. So if you find any majlis or gathering where a bunch of mu'mineen are present, some mu'min is present, and the remembrance and zikr of Allah is taking place, take a lead over others to join that gathering. It's not without a reason, see that it's not without a reason that the angels of Allah, according to the authentic hadith, we learn when the majlis for Imam Hussain alayhi salam takes place. Angels of Allah arrive and they spread the wings under the feet, under where the people are sitting in the majlis al-aza for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. They spread their wings under them, according to authentic hadith. And some of the Urafa had actually seen the angel. Obviously, because those high people don't have the hijab, they have seen the angel standing with the qarura, with something like a bowl or a jug, and gathering the tears of the mu'mineen who are shedding tears over Imam Hussain alayhi salam, gathering their tears and put angels and putting that in that qarura, and obviously they take all the tears away and back to the paradise to drop it into the fountain of Hayawan that belongs to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, where the angels bring all the tears of all the mu'mineen who are crying over Imam Hussain alayhi salam and putting in the fountain. And the more the tear is, our scholars say the tear is saltish in taste, but the more they are putting in the fountain of Hayawan, the more the fountain is becoming sweeter and sweeter and sweeter, constantly becoming more and more and more sweet. So this is what the angels are doing. So basically, this is about the remembrance of Allah. Obviously, remembering Imam Hussain alayhi salam, remembering the Ahlul Bayt, remembering Imam Ali alayhi salam is one of the greatest of the ibadat in Islam. Didn't the Prophet say that zikru aliyin ibadatun? Is that right? Remembering Imam Ali alayhi salam is ibadat. So it's the worship of Allah. Obviously, his zikr is musawi and equal to the zikr of Allah. Man zakarakum faqad zakarallah azza wa jal. Right? Whoever remembers you has remembered Allah, because of the fact that they are the mazhar of all the sifat and asma. So we find that man kana yuhibbu an ya'lama manzilatahu inda Allah, whoever loves to know what is his status in the eyes of Allah, فَلْيَنْظُرْ كَيْفَ مَنْزِلَتَهُ كَيْفَ مَنْزِلَةَ اللَّهِ عِنْدَهُ. He should see what is the status of Allah in his eyes. How much importance do we give to Allah in our practical lives, in our everyday life, in different situations, in shahawat, in ghazab, when people are in the shahawat and their desires, when they worldly desires, when they are in the situation of ghazab and anger. In any situation, how much do we remember Allah? The same importance we give to Allah is the level of importance Allah is going to give to us. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يُنزِلُ الْعَبْدِ حَيْثُ أَنزَلَهُ الْعَبْدُ مِن نَفْسِهِ. Because Allah is, we are talking about the zikr, remembrance, isn't it right? So remembrance causes us to basically not to displease Allah. Allah is going to treat the person in the same way, keep them on the same status and level, the way He keeps Allah. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ خَيْرَ أَعْمَالِكُمْ عِنْدَ مَلِيكِكُمْ. The best of your actions in the eyes of your owner. Malik means Malik. Malik is Allah. Allah is the supreme owner of everyone and everything. وَأَزْكَاهَا وَأَرْفَعَهَا. And the purest and the highest of the amal, and the highest in your darajat. وَخَيْرُ مَا طَلَعَتْ عَلَيْهِ الشَّمْسِ. And best of what the sun has risen over it, zikrullah. So the best of your amal in the hadith, we don't find the best of the amal is salatul layl. We don't find the best of the amal is reading the Quran, Khatmul Quran. You don't see best of the amal is supporting a yatim and orphan. These are very nice things, but they are not the best of the amal. Or best of the amal is going for Hajj. No, that's not the best. It's a very great action, but it's not the best. The best is, no question about that, the best is zikrullah, remembrance of Allah. فإن الله تعالى أخبر عن نفسه فقال أنا جليس من ذكرني. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed about him and said, I am the Jalis. That means I am the companion. The person who sits next to you is called Jalis. So I am the one who sits next to the one who remembers me. So Allah is our Jalis. Allah is the one who is next to us if we remember Allah. So when you remember Allah, now you are in the proximity and closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please say salawat. Zikr, which is actually the zikrun qalbi, like we already discussed in one of the previous lectures, but the zikr lisani, the oral zikr, is considered to be a muqaddimah and prelude, and it's supposed to lead us towards the zikr qalbi, in remembrance of Allah in the heart, which is actually the real zikr and remembrance is when the soul remembers from the batin. And the soul remembers from the batin when we consider Allah to be hadir and nadir, when we consider Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as present and watching. The Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam told one person this advice about the times, moments and minutes, hours, day and night, weeks, months. These are all time. In other words, time is assigned shahid and witness on Allah's behalf. Isn't that right? Witnessing and registering our amal. Every moment itself is a witness, and it is registering the action that I did in that time frame. It is registered by the time itself. Just like the earth, every part of the earth is an assigned agent on Allah's behalf, registering the actions that we perform on that soil. So basically, when Imam Sajjad al-Islam advised that mu'min, whenever he used to think about doing a sin, and he remembered Imam alayhi salam's advice that, well, even if there's nobody watching me, but the time is there. Time is shahid from Allah's behalf. Obviously Allah is there, but the time itself and the earth itself these are all witnessing. And basically he became one of the zahideen, one of the pious people, and he became successful to abstain from the sins. So tawajjuh towards in the qalb towards Allah requires the fact that we hold Allah as alam ya'lam bain Allah yara, in the Quran says, doesn't he know that Allah is seeing? So, in other words, or Allah sees, in other words. So we find that tawajjuh in the qalb will happen only when a person considers Allah to be hadir, that means present all the times, and nadir means watchful and watching us. Not just Allah, obviously, the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt and Ahlul Salam are always watching, and doesn't. This guy comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and says, my brother is very muhtat. He doesn't believe even in the imamat of yours. He is very muhtat. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said to him, which I am paraphrasing in my own words, say to him that what happened to your ihtiyat when you were close to the Nahr, close to the river at Balkh. Balkh is right now a city in Afghanistan. In those days it used to be part of Iran. This brother went back and he went back and talked to his brother after meeting with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He came all the way, far away distance from Medina to Balkh. It's thousands of miles. Then after a long trip he came back to see his brother. He met his brother and he said that my Imam has said this about you. What happened to your ihtiyat when you were on that night next to the river of Balkh? And he was shocked when he heard this statement. Did your Imam say that? Yeah, he said that. Now this brother asked, okay, what were you doing at that time? He said, yes, I did zina with the female slave of my friend. So that means your Imam was watching me even at that time when I was doing that thing. So obviously nothing is missing out from the Imam. The hadith says, تُعْرَضُ أَعْمَالُ الْعِبَادِ أَبْرَارِهَا وَفُجَّارِهَا كُلَّ صَبَاحٍ عَلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Every morning the actions of all the people, good doers and bad doers, أبرارها وفجارها, all the actions of all the people, in other words, are presented every morning in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And obviously today it's not just Rasulullah who is obviously Sayyidul A'imma and Sayyidul Anbiya. He is the head of all the Imams and head of all the Anbiya. Sayyidul Mursaleen and Ashraful Nas, Ashraful Anbiya, Ashraful Ibad. But also Imam Sahib Zaman alayhi salam is But this is one of the things which is considered to be the most difficult of all the actions. Why zikr has been also considered as the most difficult, most shadeed and severe upon a person. Look at the hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and I will end my speech here. Ashaddul a'mal salasatun. The most severe, the more hardest of the a'mal are three, Imam said. Insafun nas min nafsika. You treat the people with fairness and justice. It's very difficult to treat the people with justice. حتى لا ترضى لهم لها منهم بشيء إلا رضيت لهم منها بمثله. So basically, in other words, you are radi and pleased for them about the same thing that you are radi and pleased about yourself. So this is a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing. This person came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and said, can I look at a woman from when she is walking, from her behind? And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, do you want somebody else to look at your wife and she is walking like that? He said, no. And Imam replied, love for others what you love for yourself. If a person practices on this principle, our societies will be changed. There are people who don't like for others what they like for themselves. This is not insaf. So they are not just. They don't have the adalat installed on their own roof. How can we support Imam Sahib Zaman alayhi salam when we don't have the adalat installed on our own self? Isn't it right? حتى لا ترضى لها منهم بشيء إلا رضيت لهم منها بمثله. Second of all, مواساتك الأخ في المال. The second thing that Imam alayhi salam mentioned as the most difficult of all the actions is helping your brother with money. Giving away the money is a very difficult task. That's one of the biggest tests of a person. People are attached to the money. It's very hard for find. There are few people who are not attached. So it's very difficult to give away the money for the sake of to the people. Which is one of the signs for a person having the taharat and tazkiyah. And then the third thing that Imam alayhi salam mentioned, and I will end the speech here, was zikrullahi ala kulli hal. The most severe of all the actions is remembering Allah at all the times. Laysa subhanallah. Imam Salih says it does not mean, it is not subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar faqat. Zikr is not saying this zikr only. Walakin idha warada alayka shay'un. But actually the zikr is if you face a situation, if you face a thing, amarallahu bihi akhadhta bihi. Whenever you face a situation where Allah commands you to do this, you do it. وَإِذَا وَرَدَ عَلَيْكَ شَيْءٌ نُهِيَ عَنْهُ أَوْ نَهَى عَنْهُ تَرَكْتَهُ. And when you face a situation, a thing where Allah has stopped you from that, you leave it. So basically, abiding by the amr and nahi, abiding by the do's and do nots of Allah is actually the zikr that we are talking about, the zikr qalbi, not the zikr lisani. Imam Salih says, Laysa subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar faqat. That's not the only zikr. Which the people think zikr lisani is a big deal. You grab a sibha, a tasbih in your hand, and you say subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. This is the lowest possible zikr in ilm al-akhlaq. The lowest zikr is that you do the zikr with the lisan, which has nothing to do with the qalb necessarily. Unless a person has the zikr in the qalb, even if you don't do the zikr with the lisan, you are afdal from the person who is doing the zikr with the lisan. Without the qalb, you are afdal, even though you are maybe sleeping, because you performed your fariza towards Allah before the sleep. وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين.